Hey everybody, Sarah here. So today we're going to talk about a few different morphs that I've kind of missed along the way that are kind of outliers compared to some of the other ones that we've talked about. So before we jump in, I just want to say thank you to all of our members who have helped support this channel and keep the channel going and help keep me motivated personally. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. If anybody else would like to become a member, you can click join under any video to do that. There are two different member levels. The intro level gives you things like access to live videos after they're over, and then the level above that gets you the ability to vote on what I name snakes that either just hatched or ones that are new to my collection. There are other perks aside from those things. Just click join down below and you will be able to see everything. There's a list. Also, I have a website, sarahssnakeshop.com, where I sell corn snakes and corn snake accessories. I also wrote 2 corn snake morph books that are sort of written for the beginner in mind. So if you're interested in learning more about morphs, you can go check those out on my website. And last but not least, thank you to Reptilinks for helping to support this channel. If you guys would like to use my code sarahsnake27 at checkout at reptilinks.com, it gets you $5 off, and it also gives me an extra $5 back. And you guys also get an amazing food for your snakes. I love Reptilinks. I always have. That's why they gave me this code for you guys to use, was because I've been advocating for them for many years. So if you would like to check them out, there is also a $100 money back guarantee. Just in case your snakes don't like them, don't worry, you have that $100 money back guarantee behind you. So today we're going to be talking about 3 different mutations that are all very odd but very different from each other. We're going to be talking about RedCoat, RedFactor, and the Halo and GreenBotch mutations. The reason these have their own video is because they are kind of, like I said, they're kind of outliers. They're a little weird and they're not on your typical list. So I thought I would give everybody a very quick rundown of these mutations. I also have morph deep dives on all of these. So if you would like to see a very deep dive type of video on these mutations, I will link those up in the upper corner for you guys to check out. The first one I want to talk about is Halo, which is also GreenBotched. They're actually the same mutation. They're just a different look of the same mutation. Halo is one that I have actually had a huge hand in proving out over the years. I've been breeding corn snakes for about 13 years now, and I hatched my very first Halo snow corn snake in my first clutch of corn snakes. And back then, really nobody knew what it was, what was causing the yellow, and so I pretty much spent an entire decade proving this out. Back when I first started in the hobby in roughly 2009, 2010, GreenBotch was a type of snow. Everybody had seen this GreenBotched snow, but nobody really knew how to reproduce it. And the Halo snows did kind of exist as well. People called them bubblegum, but only when they were mixed with the sort of coral mutation. Coral adds extra pinks. It's also known as RedFactor. I'll get to that later on in this video. So since bubblegum was technically a type of coral and GreenBotched was sort of its own thing, it took a long time for everybody to kind of sort everything out and figure it out. And it turns out that GreenBotched is the homozygous version, which means the mutation came from 2 separate parents, from both of the parents. And the Halo is the heterozygous version, which means that the mutation came from 1 parent. I'm not trying to use too many big words since this is an intro video, but I thought I would kind of give you an idea of what those 2 terms actually mean, because they're very common terms in the hobby. So as far as we know, right now, we cannot actually see Halo or GreenBotched in anything that has melanin. Melanin is the dark color in the skin, and so when you see the term amel, that means amelanistic, which means all of that black pigment has been removed. But you also see hypomelanistic, which means some of that black pigment has been reduced down to a brown or tan instead. In this case, you pretty much have to have amelanism going on in the snake in order for Halo and or GreenBotched to be displayed. There are some exceptions to this, especially when you throw sun-kissed into the equation, or if you have a really light colored ghost of some kind. Basically what Halo and GreenBotched do is they add an extra layer of yellow to the snake that isn't normally there. This yellow is not carotenoid yellow, like the yellow that comes in on the cheeks and sides. It is a whole other pigment. In the heterozygous version, coming from 1 parent, which means it's not going to display quite as prominently, it shows up as Halo, and that is just a yellow ring around the blotches in the sort of border area. Now the homozygous version, which is more intense because that comes from both parents, it shows up as GreenBotch. The entire saddle looking blotch actually turns this yellow-green color. This mutation is incomplete dominant. That's we have other things like recessive, co-dominant. A lot of people have probably heard these terms and don't really know what they mean. That's totally fine. I'm here to explain it. So incomplete dominant is very similar to co-dominant, but not quite. It means that if you have something that shows the full extent of the mutation and you breed it to something that doesn't have the mutation at all, then you will get a mix of the two in the middle. All of the offspring will have a mix of the two. The difference between co-dominant and incomplete dominant is incomplete dominant will have more of an even mix of the colors, and then co-dominant will show both colors, but they're very separate from each other. An example that I like to use is incomplete dominance is like if you take red water and blue water and you put them together and they become purple water. Whereas if you have co-dominance, it's like putting water and oil into a cup. The water and oil, they're still in the cup, but they're very separate from each other. We weren't 100% sure if what we had was incomplete dominance or co-dominance, but we're pretty sure that what we have here is actually incomplete dominance. So if you see the term halo and GreenBotch, just remember it's the same mutation. The difference is just how much area that yellow shows up in. Now the next one I want to talk about is RedCoat. And RedCoat and RedFactor very often get mixed up for each other, and that's totally understandable because of the way that we say these terms. You would assume that both RedFactor and RedCoat would be red, but that is not always the case actually. RedCoat is a term used for snakes that have sort of an excess of their own natural color in their saddles. So if you have a RedCoat normal or a RedCoat lava or a RedCoat amelanistic, all of those are going to appear more red because their natural base color is red. However, when you take the reds away and you have something like anrethristic or lavender, then you kind of get this really dark color instead. A RedCoat lavender is going to have a really dark purple to their saddles. A RedCoat ghost is going to have a really dark gray to their saddles. A RedCoat anery is going to have a really dark prominent black to their saddles. RedFactor is something different though. RedFactor is usually also known as coral. So when someone says coral, they are also talking about the same look. I'm not going to go into all of those terms right now, but we're going to stick with RedFactor. RedFactor actually does add reds and pinks to every different morph of snake. So while a RedCoat anery will get really prominent blacks in their saddles, a RedFactor anery will actually be much more pink and brightly colored. You can have RedFactor and RedCoat mixed with any other morph, and sometimes they're even mixed together a lot, especially when we are talking about really high-end like coral ghost lines or coral snow lines. And what's even more interesting in a lot of coral snow lines is halo and GreenBotch are also usually mixed in there. If you see a really pink, really brightly colored, really also yellow in the borders coral snow, it's very possible that you will have all three mixed together, and I think that's really cool. One difference between RedCoat and RedFactor as well is that RedFactor is incomplete dominant, similar to halo and GreenBotch, as I mentioned at the beginning. If you have one copy of RedFactor, then the snake will be a little bit more pink than usual, and if you have two copies, which again come from both parents, it will be a lot more vibrant pink than usual. RedCoat, however, is recessive, so if you breed a RedCoat to a normal, you will not get any RedCoats. You have to have RedCoat on both sides in order for that to visually show in any of the baby snakes. So just a quick recap, we went over halo and GreenBotch, which are the same mutation, just different terms because they look a little bit different on the snake. Halo being with one copy only shows in the border area of the snake of amelanistics, typically only amelanistic types, most commonly snows. And I didn't mention this before, but if lavender is involved, you will not be able to see this halo or GreenBotch. GreenBotch, coming from both parents being two copies, will show up in the whole saddle looking blotch. Then we talked about RedCoat, which will sort of enhance the color that the snake already has, especially when we're talking about in the saddle blotches. You don't normally see signs of RedCoat too much in the other parts of the snake, so you can't really look at the belly and be like, oh yeah, that's definitely a RedCoat of some kind. It's definitely going to be showing up in the saddle blotches themselves. And of course we talked about RedFactor, which often gets very confused for RedCoat, but RedFactor actually adds those pinks and reds in, so anything that was already red is going to be more red. Anything that normally would never have any reds is actually going to show a very vibrant pink. That's going to be it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe and like and share and all that stuff. And let me know if there's any morphs in the future that you guys would like a deep dive of. Please remember, I've already done a deep dive on the majority of these morphs. So go check those out. I will actually link the playlist up above, and I will see you in a new video soon.